Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. It's good to be back on doing another live feed. In today's video I'm going to talk all about metabolic fitness. Just one second. Sorry, forgot to put the phone on silent. It was ringing there. Okay, so I'm going to talk about metabolic fitness. Metabolic fitness is something that I've been working on a lot over the last year, but really over the last kind of maybe 5 months, it's where it's kind of really picked up. It was when I finished the Valencia Marathon last year that I kind of got to thinking, if I signed up for the Valencia Marathon, like when I finished it, the next day I signed up for this year, which is going to take place in 2 weeks' time, a little over 2 weeks' time. And I knew that having finished the race last year in 3 hours, 11 minutes, I knew that if I wanted to come back and run it faster again at the age of 48, I was going to need to change. My marathon training had pretty much been on point. I was quite happy with how the training went. What happened was I found out in the race, I just felt like I was running out of energy. So I knew that just doing the same marathon training program again probably wasn't going to suffice. So I did up my game a little bit in terms of I added more mileage. I certainly added a little bit more speed work, and I've done a lot more running this year at marathon pace than what I had done last year. But the other thing that I really focused on was just changing my metabolic fitness. Now, there was a couple of reasons why I wanted to do that. First and foremost, it was like, I always keep health to the forefront of my mind when I'm doing my training or planning my training. And I wanted to make sure that I was going to get really healthy as well as just getting fit. I always have this worry. You hear these stories all the time. You know, you hear somebody down at your club saying, I knew this guy, he was in his 50s, Ironman, did loads of marathons, went to work one day, just collapsed, heart attack, died. And he gets out. So what happens when you hear those stories? You know, what is the problem? A lot of times there's an underlying health issue. So it turns out the person had some sort of a congenital heart defect, or maybe they've been sick for a while. I don't know. Sometimes there's something. But in the absence of any kind of underlying health issue, it's kind of when you think like, what happens when that does happen? And you hear these stories, and the problem is, you know, for all the people who train, you never hear about the positive. You never hear about the guy who you never hear a story saying, you know, this guy was on the road to having a heart attack, but he never had the heart attack because he took up running. I mean, that happens a million times. Same with a woman. You know, this woman was on her way to developing type 2 diabetes, but she never did because she started training. Like, you'll never ever hear that story because it's too hard to see. But you'll always hear the story about the person who collapses and dies of some sort of a heart attack or an aneurysm or a brain hemorrhage or something. And like I go back to the original point, is when that happens, it's usually because in the absence of an underlying health condition, the reason why that happens is the person has really poor metabolic health. Now, there's a difference between metabolic health and cardiovascular fitness, okay? And that's the thing that I really wanted to work on this year. It's the thing that I knew was going to bring me to the next level and therefore allow me to still push my body to respond really well to training, even though I'm getting a little bit older, okay? The best way to think about metabolic fitness in terms of like what it is, it's like metabolic fitness is your body's ability to kind of manage blood sugar levels, lipids, circulating lipids in your bloodstream, your insulin levels, and therefore inflammation, okay? So if you can regulate those all properly, you'll have a much better functioning metabolism. So you always hear about your basal metabolic rate. So that's basically, if you lay down in bed for a day, you would need a certain amount of calories to keep yourself alive. You know, you got to have your heart has to keep beating, your lungs have to keep moving, your kidneys have to keep kind of processing your blood to take out any excess fluid, and therefore urine. Also the kidneys are working to regulate blood pressure. There's a lot of stuff going on, okay? And all that takes energy. So I always remember from kind of first year science, energy is the ability to do work. So the more energy you have, the more work you're able to do. So I kind of put that into kind of marathon training processes, that if I have more energy, then I have the ability to do more work. And doing more work means that I can move fast and therefore run the marathon quicker. So if I wanted to get my metabolic fitness up, there was a couple of things I needed to do. Okay, so why it matters. So in the long term of kind of what I'm thinking about, like I said, I always think about my health when I'm training. I'm not just thinking about running. I'm always thinking about, am I healthy? Is this training going to benefit my health overall? Okay, so if you want to avoid things like, you know, just kind of lifestyle diseases like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, dementia, they kind of be the three big ones, maybe stroke as well. So those, stroke will kind of fall under cardiovascular disease, because it is a problem with blood. But anyway, those 4 major conditions, they're the 4 most likely things that are going to kill you in the absence of any sort of underlying health issue or any other disease that might strike you down, like cancer. Or and being metabolically fit will certainly reduce your risk of getting any cancers. But the 4 big ones that kill people for kind of just because they have poor lifestyle, it's usually cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, or some sort of like dementia or cognitive decline, let's say. But at the forefront of all that, the most salient thing, or the key aspect of that, is kind of blood sugar control. So if you can control the amount of sugar that's circulating in your blood, so when you eat some sort of carbohydrate, your body breaks that down and then it assimilates it through as glucose, and then the glucose gets broken down into glycogen, and the glycogen is what we use in our muscles in order to use that fuel as a source of, or use that food as a source of fuel. So when it goes into your cells, it's actually glycogen that you're burning, okay? And if you want to improve your metabolic fitness, there's a couple of things you need to do kind of in terms of lifestyle changes. So the first one would be increased amount of exercise you do, getting really adequate sleep. I'm always talking on this channel about how important sleep is, making sure you get the right type of food, the right type of calories. I'm going to talk about all that in a second. And then the last thing is just kind of managing your stress. Okay, so there's a couple of things, a couple of ways from me. So anybody who's into running, there's a couple of ways you can do that. There's a couple of ways that you can kind of benefit or maximize your cardiovascular and therefore metabolic health by doing those things. Okay. So I finished the marathon last year and I decided that I want to improve my metabolic health. So what does that mean? You know, I need to keep exercising, okay? But not just aimlessly exercising. I'm going to do my marathon training program, but I'm kind of leading into that, and kind of the structure's kind of going all around it. Is I knew that I needed to create more mitochondria in the cells in my body. So all your muscle cells have a certain amount of mitochondrial mitochondria in them. So the mitochondria is like the power station of the cell. So it's the little parts of the cell where we take the fuel in, and then we can use that, break it down, and turn it into energy for you to produce or allow yourself to do work. Okay. So having more mitochondria means that you can have more energy and therefore do more work, if you will. Okay. So in order to have more mitochondria, you need to up your exercise. And the best way to do that in terms of staying fit, staying healthy, and not getting injured is just adding in some more really low aerobic exercise. So you hear this thing getting thrown around all the time, you know, you got to run slow to run faster, you know, easy running to make you faster. And that is true to a certain extent, absolutely 100%. The more kind of zone 1 or really low aerobic exercise you do, the faster you will get, or the best way to get faster over time and maintain your health is to do really low intensity exercise. So running really slowly or just glorified walking. But the problem is, if you're training for a marathon and you want to get like a PB in a marathon, which is what I'm doing that stuff alone is not going to suffice. And it's probably not the best way to get bang for your buck in terms of your time. So we're all a little bit time pressed. I kind of work for myself. I have my own business and I have my family. So, you know, I don't have unlimited amount of time to train. So I have to make the best of the time that I have available to train. So I decided to go through my same marathon training program that I was doing last year. So it's a 16-week training program. But what I did last year, and I did the same this year, is I think I did 2 weeks of it. And then I went on holidays for like 10 days. And then when I came back, it was 16 weeks of training. So it was like to start again. So I had 2 weeks done, went on holidays, and was able to come back and just redo the 2 weeks that I had before I set off on holidays, which worked out great because it means you're coming to the marathon training program kind of fresh. I always tell people as well that I use a 16-week lead into marathon training. Some people use 14 weeks. Some people use 12. I think 12 is way too little. I think 14 is probably all right. But you'd want to be getting to your marathon training pretty fit if you're just doing 14 weeks. Same for me doing 16 weeks. I make sure that I have like what I call the base phase, which will consist of, you know, just kind of easy running, not really any hard sessions, and not really any structured runs on the weekend. But I'm pretty fit. I'm probably up to around 50k, 50 to 60k before I start my marathon training program. So when I get to marathon training, I'm capable of really, really well able to run 60k a week, and I'm really well capable of running 25k. So that's to me, being in that sort of shape and then having 16 weeks is kind of perfect. Now, depending what your marathon time is, if you're looking for a slower time, you're not pressed for that, you could probably drop it back to maybe 35 or 40 kilometers a week, and making sure that you can run about 21k in around that anyway. But that's not important for today's video. I need to stick to the metabolic fitness. Okay, so I'm doing my marathon training program. I need to increase the amount of mitochondrial density in my cells. So what I can do then is I can start adding exercise. So in my last video, I spoke about this. I started to just do loads of walking. So any time where I would just have some dead space, or if there was like a time where I needed to go out in my car, like go down to the shop, little is about just over a kilometer from my house. Usually I would just drive down and back on the weekend if I needed something. So I started to just walk. So it was just a 2k walk, which a kilometer will take you probably about 10 minutes. So it's really a 20-minute walk. I would do that, as often as I could, or as often as I needed to. I started in the evening time, particularly on days where I had run. I tried to get 10,000 steps in as well. So I was going out in the evening time, just doing anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on what I had done that day. I found this really beneficial. When I started doing my long runs in the marathon training, I would then go out that afternoon, like maybe with the kids or something, if we were going out for an ice cream or something, and I would try and walk for about half an hour. And I felt that when I wake up in the Monday morning, having done the half an hour walk on top of like a 25, 30, 32k run, 35k run, I always felt way better once I had done that run. What was happening in my body is that I was making all these new mitochondrial cells, okay? Mitochondria in the muscle cells. And then that was allowing me to kind of regulate this blood sugar that I was talking about. So now what I'm able to do is when I eat food, because I have way more mitochondria in my cells, I can take that glycogen into my cells and I can burn it off really quickly. And therefore I don't get these kind of spikes and drops in my blood sugar, because I have the capability to burn it really well, or to utilize it really well. Again, when I've eaten, if I have some sort of circulating lipids, because you have way more mitochondrial density in those muscle cells, you get to kind of work through that. And what that will do then, that will start to regulate your weight. So my weight was kind of starting to plateau when I started doing this. And then when I started into the marathon training program, then I would add in because I was now going up to running 65, 70, 80, even up to 90 kilometers a week. My muscle tone was getting much better. And if you don't have the low aerobic exercise with it, although you get better muscle tone, you might not get the best bang for your buck in terms of how much mitochondria you have in those muscle cells. So although some people getting a little bit of getting better shape when they're doing a marathon training program, they don't have the ability to utilize or to stabilize the blood sugar and the lipids floating around the blood. And if you can't do that, then that leads to a promotion of inflammation. So you start feeling stiff and sore. And you'll see this if you're doing lots of, like I definitely noticed this before in the past, is that I would get quite fit, but then once I would stop, my fitness would drop really quickly, as in I would lose the fitness that I had gained. The weight would come back on as soon as I finished exercising, because I didn't have that mitochondrial density in the cells. So once I started eating, and if I ate the same amount, but then my exercise dropped, my weight would just go up. And I found over the last 5 or 6 years, it just creeped up each year, adding becoming a kilogram or 2 kilograms heavier. I found now that once I started doing this kind of lots of low aerobic exercise, like the walking, I also do stuff where I take out my Dynabands and just do some chest press, chest flies, some shoulder press. I also do press ups and sit ups. Just basically what I try and do is I try to burn 1,500 kilocalories a day. And then because I'm doing that, that's making my muscle tone much better, but it's also making sure that I pack it up with lots of mitochondria. So what happens is now, my weight has kind of dropped it probably about 5 kilos over the last maybe 6 weeks. And that's because my exercises went up so high. And because I've been doing this now, like it takes about 4 or 5 months before you really start to reap the benefits. But when I look in the mirror, I can see the muscle tone is way better than it has been for a very long time. I don't remember being kind of as in good a shape as I am at the moment in terms of aesthetically, but also how I feel as well. When I started doing the long runs, I couldn't believe how much energy I had. And it's because I have so much mitochondria in the cells, I can access the energy in my body much better. And then I can kind of, when I start to run low on glycogen, my body then has the ability to take those lipids and then start burning that. So it's kind of fat oxidative exercise, which is what we all want, fueling yourself as you go along with fat stores, because we pretty much have an unlimited amount of fat stores. So yeah, all that stuff was just kind of compounded. There's no kind of one real way to do it, but it's kind of the reasoning behind why I was doing it. Is one, I wanted to get much healthier. I wanted to make sure that when I get older, that I'm still able to function, and I wanted to run a marathon faster. That's kind of the reason why I kind of honed in on that metabolic fitness and made myself much more aerobically efficient in terms of how I move myself across the ground when I'm running. My heart rate has come down. I mean, my heart rate is always pretty low, but if you go on Strava and look at my heart rate over my previous runs and my recent runs, it's really low. When I do an easy run now, and that could be running from 450 per kilometer to 520 per kilometer, my heart rate is usually down around 110 when I'm cruising along at that, because, like I said, I have lots of mitochondria in the cells, and therefore I have the ability to do more work. And because I have the ability to do more work, it takes less stress in the system, so therefore the heart rate doesn't have to be as high. And that's pretty much what's happened. So just to give an example, I rocked up to the Dublin Half Marathon this year. I knew I was going to have a good race because I was feeling really fit and really fast, but I didn't think that I knew because of how fit I had got because of this protocol that I was going to be pretty close to getting a PB. But on the day that it happened, doing the Dublin Half Marathon, I kind of cruised through it, and I ran the fastest half marathon that I've ever run at the age of 48. Now, that's not, if that was just coming from somebody who kind of just started running and you kind of said, right, you get a PB at 48, maybe you only started when you were 40 or whatever, and took a little while to get into it. I've been running half marathons for 20 years. I remember kind of going up. I remember for a long time trying to break 90 minutes in a half marathon. So it wasn't that, my point is, it wasn't that I just kind of came to this in the last couple of years and it's a PB. This is something that I really worked on for 10 or 15 years when I was younger, trying to get down. My fastest was 120, I think it was 128, 120 I was in, so probably about 128.30. That was probably the fastest I ever done, or it's just slightly lower than that. And this summer I did 128.07. And that was the complete result of, I took off in that race running at a particular pace. And I said to myself, I kind of just felt, I know I'm going to have to slow down pretty soon because I just can't maintain the speed. But because I had all that extra mitochondrial cells, I had the much better muscle tone because of the stuff I was doing. The case never came that I need to slow down. And in fact, the last 2 kilometers of that race were my fastest two. It's actually sped up in the last 2 kilometers. So absolutely fantastic. That gave me huge confidence then for now. So I'm leading into the Valencia Marathon, which is going to be not this Sunday, not the following Sunday, the Sunday after. So just a little over 2 weeks away. I'm pretty sure that, barring a disaster, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hit a personal best in the marathon, which is exactly what I wanted to do when I set out on this journey a year ago when I signed up to that Valencia Marathon to come back. Last year, the plan was to do it in 3:05, but I just, like I said, I ran out of energy in the race. I ended up finishing at 3:11, but I got to 25 kilometers running at the pace that I need to run this year. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to get that 3:05 this year, and fingers crossed. And that is pretty much it on the metabolic fitness. If anybody has any questions, you can stick them down below and I'll answer them. What I'm going to do now is, I got some questions sent to me on my last live stream from somebody, so I'm just going to pop them up because I promised him, Martin, that I would go through all those in this video. So I'm just going to pull that up on my phone here, so I'm looking down. I'll just get that up, and then I can go through all those. Actually, I'll go to it in YouTube and I'll find it, and then he sent me a load of questions, which was great, and it was just too much to answer in kind of just one sitting because of so much stuff on it. So I thought that I will go through them in this video, which is what I'm going to do now. So right, let's get that thing up. I'll have to start the video. So I'm just going to get this question from Martin. Right, okay, so Martin says, I'm going to have to take this in pieces because it is quite a long question, but it's really good. I really enjoyed reading it because he hits on some absolutely salient points. So let's see. So he says, right, thanks, Neil. Enjoy a lot of the recent Valencia content and relating to a lot of gains and reasoning for your gains you've seen this year of your Valencia build. Okay, so a few questions that may be for a future stream, which is what we're going to do now, Martin. You mentioned that you've got your mileage up this year as a factor, and how are you structuring your training week to get in the extra miles? Okay, so we'll start with that. So basically, I'm following the same training program that I did last year, except this year, one of the things that I realized, even before I went to Valencia last year, is that I just felt it was probably on the plane going over. I just felt that I hadn't ran enough miles at marathon specific pace. I had done quite a few miles kind of at tempo pace and at interval pace, so kind of faster than marathon pace. I'd done loads of miles slower than marathon pace, but I hadn't actually run a whole lot of miles at marathon pace. So this year on my Sunday runs or my long runs, I made sure to just get low. So I started off just getting 5K, just throwing it in at marathon pace. And then that would go to pretty quickly. That went to 6K, 2 by 6K, and then it built up to it just built up to the point where I got 25 kilometers running at marathon pace. That was leading into Dublin. And just last weekend, I did 4 times 5 kilometers at marathon pace. That's kind of building into this Valencia marathon. With the marathon pace miles I've been running them at 4:15, which is the sub 3 hour or the 3 hour pace. I'm kind of doing that because, if I'm being honest, I was kind of hoping that maybe I would go for sub 3 in Valencia this year, but I don't think that's going to be the case. A couple of things have happened. I don't want to push it. My worry is I really, really want to get a personal best this year. I need to go under 3:08:52, which is my PB. And my worry would be, I think I would be close to sub 3 hours, but my worry would be, and this has happened to me before in the past twice, is that I go out and run at sub 3 hour marathon pace, and I get up around 37 kilometers, and then I end up walking, and I come in at 3:10 or 3:15 or if that happened this year, that'd be a disaster. So I think I'm just going to go with the 3:05 pace. That's running at 4:22 per kilometers. And just, if I get that, then that's just literally, if you would have said to me in January this year, you're going to run 3:05 in Valencia, I would have said 100%, I don't care about anything else, I'll take it. So I need to keep that in my mind. When because people do text me saying, are you going for, they see what I do on Strava, and they're like, are you going for sub 3 hours? No, I'm going for 3:05. If I get 3:04:59, I'll be ecstatic. Okay. So yeah, so I added in a little bit of extra miles. Last year, say if my Martin training program said 8K easy, this year I might just do 10K easy. On my warm-ups, I tend to do like maybe 3 or 4 kilometers warm-up, whereas last year I was probably doing 1 or 2 kilometers, and just throwing in a few little kilometers each week definitely helped bring up the overall mileage. So that's the first question. How many days are you running? So I run up until I start the 16-week training program. I try to run every day, but I don't get to run every day because, like I said, I've got a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 10-year-old kid, so they take their schedule and their timing dictates that, and then I work for myself. So I never plan a run when their time is that I could be working. I always have slots in the day where I can run, but I never plan it to get me. So I don't. When I'm not marathon training program, I don't plan to give myself a day off because life always throws me a day off, if that makes sense. So I probably run 5 or 6 days a week when I'm not marathon training program, or when I'm not on my marathon training. It's not uncommon that some weeks I might get 7, and I might get 7 2 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row, so no day off for 21 days, and then I might have 2 days off. It just depends. But when I'm marathon training program, I make sure that I take 1 full day off every week. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. Are you keeping it with 80-20 approach? Yes, I am. Maybe even more, maybe 90-10. I do a lot of easy running. If anybody follows me on Strava, you see that it's like, 65 minutes easy, 50 minutes easy. I do lots of easy running. The vast majority of my running is easy. I'm doing this a long time. I don't look at it as the 80-20 much anymore, because it's a lot of it comes by default for me. And what I'm always thinking of, like I said, I'm always thinking about my health, but I kind of work in terms of what's the stimulus I need. So I have my training program, and like today, so just give you an example of what I mean by that is, last week it was quite stormy and there was lots of rain in Dublin on Wednesday and Friday. So I had to do 2 runs on the treadmill because it was just too bad and too dark. The time of day that I got to run was just too bad, so I couldn't run outside. So I did 2 runs on the treadmill. As a result of that, I had a really sore foot for about 5 or 6 days. Last week when I went out on my long run, I was supposed to do 37 kilometers, but after 14, I had to get the train home because my foot was so sore, I had to stop. So this week, to get to that point, I think I say to myself, what is the stimulus I need today when I go out running? So all week it's just been easy running. Like there's no point. The stimulus isn't that I needed to do intervals. There was a day where I needed intervals, but it's just I couldn't do it because I knew it would aggravate my foot. And this comes when you've been running for a long time. So I just think, right, the best stimulus or the most appropriate stimulus I can get is just do some easy running, make sure I get some good mileage done. And that's what I did all week. And then it came to today, Friday. On my marathon training program, it had, I was supposed to do like 20 minutes at tempo run, and then 8 times a minute fast, a minute easy. But because I had missed out on some stuff during the week, I decided that I was just going to do 8 times 1 kilometer today. I didn't want to go really fast at the 1 minute because I didn't want to aggravate the foot. So I just thought I'll just do, it's a classic marathon session training program, just 8 times 1K on with 2 minutes off. So I did that. So again, I'm a little bit off piece from my marathon training program, but this marathon in Valencia is going to be marathon 26. So I've been around the block, so I know how to mess with it. And I'm also a running coach. I know how to change things on the fly if you want. And that's why it's so good having a coach. I coach a couple of people, and it's the best part about having coaches. You can do exactly like what I did this week. With the people who I coach, I don't give them a training plan. I don't go for the next 16 weeks. This is what you do. I look at them on Strava. I look at what they did the week before, and I add the stimulus they need for the following week. So each week, I'm just giving them the stimulus that they need, and that's what I do with myself. That's a long, convoluted way of answering that, but I hope that makes sense. Do you try to keep the same structure every week? Yes, I try to get lots of easy running. I pretty much, for my whole life, I do all my runs are easy. One run during the week will be a high stimulus run or interval session, so something fast, intervals, or could week on week. 1 week could be interval, the next week could be tempo, and then my Sunday run, there's usually some sort of marathon pace in it. So that's pretty much what happens with me. It's all easy, 1 day intervals, and in the long run, some marathon pace stuff. Or if I'm doing half marathons training, it'll be half marathon in the long run. I very seldom do an interval session and a tempo run session and a long run in the same week. I would almost never do interval session and tempo run in the same week. That would probably never. So yeah, I do keep the same structure, all easy, 1 interval and a long run with some structure in it. What do you think running Dublin do for your Valencia target? Do you feel that Dublin helped consolidate extra fitness, or did it risk bringing in too much fatigue? Okay, so that's a really good question. I didn't plan on racing Dublin the way I ended up racing Dublin. Okay, so at the start of the year, I signed up for Dublin. I didn't get into the entry. I didn't get an entry, but then a couple of weeks out from Dublin, or a good few weeks out, somebody who I know said to me that they can get me into Dublin Marathon. So I said I would take the slot, and the plan was to do it. I don't need to be contrived. My plan was just to kind of toddle around and do it. Like, for me, around about 3:20 would have been a really good long run, and that was my plan. Just to kind of, I don't mean to sound contrite, but running it at 3:20 for me would have been difficult enough, but not a massive stress, and that was my plan. But because I'd been doing all this metabolic fitness, and I got myself really in good shape, and I was running. We had a little bunch of us that was running on Sunday mornings. There was like 6 of us in the group, and 4 of those or 3 of those were training for a sub 3 hour marathon. 2 of them got sub 3 hours in Dublin. I was running with them, and I was actually, on a lot of the mornings, I was kind of leading the run. I was the one who was kind of pushing the pace, which I just couldn't believe that was. I thought I was going to be hanging on to the back of these guys, and in paper I should have been, because I just wasn't as fit or as fast as them. But because I had been doing all this stuff, I ended up being really fit. So my confidence went through the roof. So when it came to Dublin, I thought, I'll give the PB a shot. I didn't think that was going to be a huge amount of effort for me. I knew it was going to be a lot more difficult than just a long Sunday run. And I ended up getting 3:09. I was 17 seconds slower than my PB. I got 3:09, whatever, low 3:09.12 or something like that. My PB is 3:08.52 or 3:09.11. I think I got. So yeah, I didn't plan to race Dublin like that. Do I think it hampered my marathon? I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, if you're doing Valencia, I think the Dublin Marathon is too close. Again, I've done a lot of marathons. I didn't really taper properly for Dublin, and when I came out of Dublin, I didn't take the appropriate rest time after Dublin. So that wouldn't be ideal. However, running with my friends that were training for the sub 3 hour marathon gave me a huge amount of fitness and a huge amount of confidence that I could run at the pace that I was running at. My interval sessions have got a lot better because I've been running with them one, I developed a lot of fitness, but two, the confidence was the main thing that I got from running with them. So, and I think a lot of that led to me getting the PB in the half marathon, as well as doing the metabolic fitness. But I wouldn't recommend it, and I don't think it was the best thing. I don't think there's two ways I could look at it. You could say I could say to myself, and sometimes I do, that had I not done Dublin, I think I would have been definitely thinking that I could probably go for the sub 3 hours in Valencia. Yeah. But then the flip side of that is, had I not done Dublin, I wouldn't have done all those Sunday runs with those guys. We must have done 8 or 9 runs together where we were really pushing marathon pace, really big runs, really fast. Like coming in up from a 35k run, having an average of about 420 per kilometer. So yeah, not ideal, but I think I did gain a lot from it. And with the benefit of hindsight, if you said to me, would you do it all again? I don't think I would have changed anything this year. I would love to. I'd love to be in a position where I'm saying I'm going to try and break 3 hours in Valencia, but I just don't think that will be the wisest thing to do. And I don't think doing the Dublin Marathon is the reason why I'm thinking that. It's that although I did get really fit and really fast, and I'm really happy with where I've got, I just haven't got far enough down the road. If I had an extra 6 months or an extra 3 months, probably it would work out. But the main objective for the year was to get a PB in the marathon. And that's what I need to keep in front of my mind. And that's what I need to remember. Because like I said, if I went out fast in Valencia and ended up walking, that would be a real disaster. And then would you structure it like this again if you were to repeat it next year? Definitely not. No, if I was to do it again next year, no, I wouldn't. I'm not going to sign up for Valencia again next year, regardless of how it goes this year. I'm not going to. But if I was doing Valencia next year, I wouldn't do Dublin Marathon. No, I wouldn't. I think when I talked about the confidence I gained, I thought when I was like 44, 45, 46, my running was kind of had gotten really bad. And I thought that the reason why it had gotten bad was because I was just getting old and the boat had sailed and I just wasn't going to get fast anymore. And then having trained for Valencia last year and got really happy with how that went, and then got the PB this year because of the metabolic fitness training. That's given me a huge amount of confidence, and I realized that I still have a lot more potential than what I thought I had. It's really, really been an eye-opener for me. Like, I can't explain how much of an eye-opener it has been. So I'm really happy with that. But if I was to do it next year, no. I'm in the battle for Dublin, so if I get Dublin Marathon, who knows? After Valencia, I need to take some downtime. I've pretty much been on this marathon training journey for 2 years. So spent a year leading into Valencia trying to get myself fit and back in shape, and was really pleased with how Valencia went last year, and then continued it on this year. Done a good few races this year. I think I did 3 half marathons, 10 mile, the 5 mile, and he did a good few races. Really happy with it, but I am looking forward to it tapering down now. I'm looking forward to doing lots of cross training. I'm going to get back on my bike once Valencia's over. I'm going to get back in the pool. I will certainly keep running. I've signed up for the Raheny 5 mile. I'm going to try and work on some speed. I think I can get really fast. Like, I think I can get a good bit faster. With those guys who I was running with on the Sunday mornings, when I say I was pushing the pace and I was leading the marathon charge, as you will, I was. When we got to the half marathon, the 2 people who did break 3 hours, they ran 125 in the half marathon. I ran 128, and that's not insignificant. Although I was kind of able to match them for 25 kilometers on a Sunday run, I wasn't able to match them. I certainly wouldn't be able to run their pace for 10k or for the half marathon. And speed does matter when you're up around that kind of PB end of your marathon training. If you want to PB or chase a time that you've done a previous year, you've got to make sure that you're faster. And I'm faster than I was last year at Valencia. I think last year leading into Valencia, I just about dipped under the 20 minutes for a 5k. I think now I'd easily break 20 minutes for a 5k. So I'm certainly faster than I was, but I need to get a little bit faster. If it is a case I want to break 3 hours a marathon, I don't know whether it is. I don't think it is. I think once I PB this year, if I do PB, I think that will be enough. I think I'll be happy. Well, we'll see. Who knows? But I will spend a bit of time kind of working on speed. Definitely take my volume down a little bit and start doing stuff like I'd like to do a good bit of gym work over the next couple of months after Valencia. Certainly like to get back on my bike and do a bit of cycling and Quite fancy the prospect of getting into the pool, although most people who swim super early, so I don't know. I'm not an early morning person. Anything before 8 a.m. for me is the middle of the night, so who knows? Anyway, I hope this made sense. I don't see any questions, but I'm streaming through YouTube. Yeah, I don't think anybody has put any questions, so yeah, I will end it there. I hope this made sense, guys. I hope it helped somebody. If it did, just send us a message, give us a little thumbs up, and remember, between now and when the next one I'm on, I'll be back on again next week with another live stream. I'll pick a topic to go through. If you have any questions, just let me know. Anyway, in the meantime, guys, before I finish up, I'd like to say thanks to Martin. It was really appreciate getting that long text with all those kind of highlighted part of questions. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, in the meantime, guys, you know what to do. Run far, run fast, run slow, run sensible.